Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for tuning in to the Everyday Intuition podcast. And today's guest, um, secretly, quietly, and I didn't tell him this, so he's probably watching this now, going, "Really?" Secretly, quietly, somebody I've idolized ever since I heard him on the radio 20 something years ago. Um, I was always somebody that wanted to be involved with comedy and or radio and or whatever, and now I have a podcast studio. So you fill in the gap. John Mulrooney joined me for my first ever in studio podcast, which it was his preference. He wanted to come in instead of being on the Zoom, which totally get. Um, so I had to do some kind of fancy dancing. So I spent the entire day, week really kind of setting up sound and all this other good stuff, only to find out that I didn't hit record on the first part of the interview. But I did have another camera set up. So the first part of this is actually a little bit raw. It's actually taken off of an iPhone, but the sound quality, I really had to kind of work with it to get it pretty good. And the second half is, very similar to what you see here on Zoom. So I want to thank John for being a part of it. He was a great sport, consummate professional. Went ahead with all the glitches that came in. I'm still kind of learning the equipment, but what I really want you to focus in on is the conversation. He talks about everything from being recognized by Eddie Murphy to understanding his own consciousness and understanding kind of where teaching. And you'll notice that he mentions several teachers as he goes along, several sources, whether it be the Course of Miracles, whether it be other, guru wisdoms, whether it be understanding and philosophies. He is somebody that is becoming very well learned for his own path, which I think is an amazing thing, and it's a great example for all of us. I'm glad John was able to sit down with me for a time, and I promise John next time be a little bit cleaner with the technical stuff. I've learned a lot even through this, and true to form, that's why we were connected again. So without further ado, cue up a little jazz music, and here comes John Mulrooney and Brandon on Everyday Intuition. Gets us all synced. Hey everybody, and welcome to Everyday Intuition. I am Medium T, Brandon Ross. Thanks so much for joining us. And with me, in case you haven't figured it out, face recognition and everything is can I call you world famous?
Infamous.
Infamous?
Yeah, infamous. Big difference. Yeah,
perfect.
Pearl Harbor was infamy. Yeah,
that's right.
So I align myself with the infamous happenings.
You don't know if you necessarily align yourself with being known everywhere for all the wrong reasons. You want to be known for all the right reasons.
I think infamous covers it all. I think it's a nice wide umbrella, kind of paints the picture. The infamous comedian / rock on tour,
Perfect.
John Mulrooney.
Perfect. So we are here with John Mulrooney, and if you haven't caught any of his videos about his nuggets of wisdom, his words of encouragement, I followed you for years, obviously, on the comedic tour. And those of you that don't know, if you're in upstate New York, of course, you remember him from the Wolf and Mulrooney show, Waking Up with the Wolf, way back when. And it was Ellen that was on there as well.
Ellen Z. I did a couple other morning radio shows. I did The Edge. There was a talk radio station that lasted 2 days that I did a show on, and also did television up in the area and nationally. But yeah, mostly from Waking Up with the Wolf. Well, it was Waking Up with the Wolf, then it was Wolf and Mulrooney, and then it fell apart like most things in the world.
It's all good.
It is. Yeah, it's all good.
But on your resume to have morning zoo type show, of course, is kind of par for the course, right?
Kill yourself! Don't say morning zoo type show.
I know, right? I'm sorry.
We actually beat Howard Stern back in the day, and that was really cool because Howard started trashing us on the air, which was great.
Oh,
that's how we knew.
That's just I got the guy.
Okay,
That was
got it.
exactly it. Yeah. Who are these guys, Wolf of Mulrooney? And he knew who I was. I did his show.
Oh, did you really?
Absolutely, yeah. He
Wow.
knew exactly who I was, and because I was, well known in the comedy business.
Right.
Sam Kinison, Dice Clay. That was my graduating class. Those were all the guys that I came up with, and
then you did work with Clay a couple of times, right?
Yeah, many
and
times,
you went on tour with Kinison.
Didn't go on a tour with Kinison, but I worked with everybody that you can name. I've worked with somewhere, some place. We've crossed paths, and I've seen the best of the best, and and the worst of the worst. But I've actually got to be with, the Jedi Knights of comedy. The Bill Cosbys, the George Carlins, the Richard Pryors, Eddie Murphy. When Eddie Murphy was 18, we were crossing paths in the comic strip one night, and he was with a couple of his buddies, and I was fairly new to comedy, but he was already, like, everybody was watching this kid.
Right, he was already popping.
Kid, right, he
Yeah.
was popping. And as I walked by, I gave him the nod, and he turned to his buddies and he said, "That white boy there is funny." And my feet didn't touch the ground for 2 days.
Isn't it great?
Eddie Murphy thinks I'm funny. And and all these people, all of these great comedians, I don't know how it happened, but I was in the right time at the right place with the right idea, like a bunch of, I can't even say a bunch, a handful of other great comedians, really just standouts. I still look back on it and I go, how did that happen? I was just paddling around in the ocean on my board, lost. Here comes this wave, and I went, that looked like it might be fun, and off we went. Oh my God, what a ride!
How is the creative process for you? And I want to I'll circle back to the Eddie Murphy thing here in a second, but how is the creative process for you? Is it like, oh, that's funny, I'm going to tweak it, or do you just sit there and brainstorm? Like, how does a well-crafted bit come together?
For me, the way it comes together is a seed of an idea that somebody will say to me, and I'll laugh, or that kind of expansive pop that goes in your head when you get something.
Yeah.
Somebody told me once that pointed out that the word question is actually 2 words. It's a quest ion. An ion is a particle in search of its opposite charge, which is the solution. Solution ion. It brings it back into solution.
Yeah.
And so when you send off an ion, an idea, a question, and it returns to you with an answer, when it pops in that little explosion, we say it dawns on you. You feel this energetic kind of rush where this new light. Like, no one ever says it dusked on you. It's the same light, but it's new light. So that's kind of how it is. You throw out this thought, or you keep yourself open to it, and a little ion comes up and, ooh, wouldn't that be a pow?
Yeah.
There's the bit. And then you go, oh. I used to call it the eureka factor. We'd be working with a team of creative people, and we'd be jamming on ideas. Let's try this, and let's try that, and let's try that thing. And it was like someone threw a spark in a room full of fumes. Boom! And we all go, that's the one.
Yeah, there we go.
There it is. And then we'd be off and running. And then the energy would kind of just pull you into the answer of the finished product. It was literally effortless. And in fact, my experience with it is, when you tap into that role correctly, especially in initial stages, until you learn how to manage that energy, it is so intense. I mean, it is literally addictive. I remember getting on a roll in first couple of times in a comedy club where I had the basics down, but suddenly that energy emerged, and I was working without a net. There were no training wheels. I'm riding the bike. I'm like, I'm in front of a crowd, and stuff is working, and I'm making things up, and I'm using some of my head. I literally could not sleep sometimes for days.
I totally understand it.
Yeah.
I totally understand. And actually, it's, this is a great direction for our conversation, because how much of that is using your intuition? Like, you're playing off the energy of the crowd, and how much of it is pure bit? Like, hey, I wrote it down, I tested it, A plus B equals C, and I got to go A plus B equals C. But then you always have that little bit of, some people call it improv. Like, comedians will call it improv, and they'll say off the cuff or, whatever. How much of that then becomes, like, intuitively, you're like, these guys are going to love it if I go here with us? or it's the same thing if you're in front of a crowd and you're like, oh, I can't do blue with these guys, or I can push the limits a little bit with this one. Like, what's the trigger for you? How does it
you're always, or at least I'm always, using my intuition with some pre-recorded material. Even when I'm using that, I'm using my intuition to feel how to pace it, when to cut it off. Do I let it go longer? Do I pause? Do I take a little break? Do I take it a step up? Do I make it a little edgier? I look at an audience when I go out, when I perform stand up. I feel like I'm the chef and their ingredients and spices. And I walk out and I don't know what I'm going to cook. It's like Gordon Ramsay. I mean, they fly that guy into a jungle and he's cooking bugs for people and it's delicious. I feel like I hit the stage. I have a bunch of stuff in my fridge, but let's see what's in your fridge. Because I know what's in my fridge. Let's poke around in yours. So I'll take
great analogy.
I'll take a dash of the loud lady that came in late, right? I'll take a pinch of the drunken idiot sitting up front.
What a formula.
Right? Mix it all together, shake well, ha. There you have it.
And I know we've had a few conversations, but when I do message circles, I actually fancy them more as comedic adventures. I call it funny you should say that, because I would say things, and then for years I would hear that, and I would say like, hey, this is, I'd make a reference of something, and they'd be like, yeah, it's funny you should say that. That reminds me of my grandfather. Well, I'm the medium, here it comes. And when you get into a live setting and you have multiple people there, there's a lot of energy. And for me, when I come out, I literally do the technique of psychometrizing what's going on. You're saying, hey, the drunk and the one that comes in late and that sort of thing. Those are all fun fodder. But in almost every single time of a live event, I'll have that person I go back to, that kind of running joke of, we're gonna meet a man in Stewart's, or whatever the joke may be. And it plays well. First of all, it's entertaining. And of course, I have to call myself entertainment. That's, so I embrace it. But the process of it, I find I don't watch other mediums and go, wow, that was a great message. I do, I respect them. But I watch comedians and I watch their delivery, because they're all into the moment. Because that, I think, is more, it's one of the professions where you have to have a high intuition. I mean, so anybody can go out there, and there's other, people that are really bit driven, where they just go bit. And, you look at like Carlin in later years, he just, he was fastidious with like his notes, and, he goes A to B and, here you go, this is what he does. It's the same show every night. And then you have other people that will do exactly what you're talking about, where you get your kind of like, okay, I got this in the fridge, this in the fridge, this in the fridge, but let's see what comes in tonight. I think that's high intuition. Do you think that grew for you over years, or did it ever become stagnant where you're just like, I just got to get through this bit and get out of here?
It was there. I just didn't use it. Like as a kid, my muscles were there, but you have to mature into a bone structure that'll allow you to lift really heavy weights. So it's kind of the same thing as with comedy or with any creative endeavor. The drive is there. You step up on stage, you grow and you expand in spheres of awareness. Your first 3-4 times on stage, everything might be learning how to just pull the mic out of the stand and proper mic placement. Once you get that down, you now know sound. Now you can listen to the sound, and maybe that speaker should be a little bit this way. Maybe I need to project a little bit more. So each one of these spheres keep growing outward, and they all contain the former spheres, but they keep expanding outward into greater spheres of awareness. And one of the greatest ones that I merged into, or it merged with me, however you want to describe it, was when I was able to set aside what I had prepared and act on what was coming up spontaneously. And that's when I realized that, okay, well, this is a collaboration.
100%.
This is initially, of course, I was, R&I, great, look what I can do, look at this, look at that, but there's no humor without a collaboration and without the collective.
Right.
When people used to say to me all the time, well, you come up with this stuff right at the top of how do you see that? And my answer was a question. How is it you don't? To me, it was sitting right there. It was like, it's analogous to complimenting a stereo speaker for the music coming out of it.
Right.
I don't know where it comes from. Like, I don't know where the electricity from these where these outlets come from.
Well,
but I use
we know that's 50-50, as we've learned.
We know there's a problem with the electric here, but that.
Well, there you go. Here's to hoping. We should probably tape that into the wall a little bit, but it's all good.
But occasionally my outlet has gotten shaky when I was on stage. A couple times the power gets cut, and you go,
and you're like, was I that bad? It's the old electronic hook, the Mercury retrograde hook, so to speak. But it's, you're bringing up a lot of points with this, and the feed of the crowd and that sort of thing. I mean, part of the reason why I always look at humor in mediumship is because it really raises the vibration. Like when people laugh, it's a certain vibration. When people are sad, and I think a lot of people, when they first get into this, or at least, it's funny, just as we were getting started, we were talking about the graduating class of, all these comedic, these comedic geniuses. And in my graduating class, like half of them, we're really still kind of going like the dim light rooms, the candles, the incense, and kind of invoking like, okay, this is spooky. This is, kind of thin veil time. I'm more
thin
about,
veil time?
Yeah, in other words, like, in October as we're recording this, this is the time where the veil is thin, where our connection with spirit is that much closer. There's not as much in between it.
Why is that in October?
Well, it has more to do with Samhain. It has more to do with, we call it Halloween, but it's more along the lines of All Saints Day. It's actually kind of the cyclical pattern that we have, just like our bodies have circadian rhythms. The earth also kind of manifests itself in constant change. It's kind of how it keeps going. It's the spiritual reasons for weather. It's the spiritual reasons for, the constant change that goes on, and it's a letting go. And during the letting go, you have to not necessarily have your walls up so that it can escape. So that's the idea of how the veil is thin rather, because this is when everybody and their brother is like, I hear a sound. Okay, was that a ghost? Was that and it's just that, it's fun fodder when you're, watching funny movies about it and, Ghostbusters or whatever the case may be. But to somebody like me, I think it's a way for people to kind of share in what I experience almost all the time, like constant presence of spirit and that sort of thing. But when you're in front of a group like that, you raise the vibration with laughter. That's why I come out, and it's funny, we're talking about bits. I do the same thing. I tell the story about, how I got pulled over by a police officer, and instead of when he rolled down the window and he says, do you know why I pulled you over? And I'm like, you miss your grandmother? Like, not a good way to start that conversation, right? But by the end of it, I delivered a message, and he was, for lack of better terms, he was cool. And I delivered a reading, to him, and it was spot on. Had I been wrong, I could still be doing time for it. But it's the crowd really enjoys that story, because it's like, oh gosh, I didn't see that coming, or, whatever. But then they laugh by the end of it. That would set the tone, because then their spirit would open up, their loved ones. So, if they're all tense, that's not a good way to deliver comedy messages, spiritual connection. What's the first thing you're supposed to do when you meditate is relax. You do breathing exercises. You work with your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. You bring yourself down. Laughter does the same thing. It helps you release things.
Two things you can't do when you're laughing. You can't speak, and you can't think. Nobody talks while they're laughing. They might interrupt one to do the other, but when you're really laughing, you can't speak, and you're not thinking of anything when you're laughing. It's a great way to interrupt. To pattern interrupt somebody, to interrupt what has been described as their negative feedback loop. If you can disrupt that negative feedback loop, whatever they're feeding themselves in their head with a joke, it totally is like hitting the reset button on a computer.
Is that why healing, has to take place within laughter? I mean, do you feel laughter is healing?
No. Okay. No, I feel it's a byproduct of healing.
Okay, keep going.
Because much of what is healed for me did not come through laughter. It came through. I can say it came through. For me, healing is always to make whole,
right?
And to make whole is to be happy.
Yeah.
So just being whole and happy in and of itself is not humorous, but humor can emerge from it. And quite often, healing for me has come after complete surrender. Complete and utter surrender. The laughter will come from it, like laughing at the absurdity of what I was holding on to. But I wouldn't say it's a dynamic, integral component of healing. It's a side effect. And some of the greatest healing moments, which one I had actually yesterday when I posted video about my father. I didn't know I was going to get so emotional talking about my dad. He's been gone 14 years, but for whatever reason, yesterday struck a nerve with me, and it just welled up, and I choked up a little bit during my my little walk that I recorded. But when I got home, I lost it, and I really had a purging, and that happens quite often in the process. I found that when you ask, or at least when I asked, what is this all about? I don't get it. Please show me. I was really shocked at the way the mind heals. It really surprised me. A lot of it I found startling. A lot of it I didn't want anybody to see. A lot of it I didn't ever want to go through again. I didn't want anyone to find out about. But now I look back at it, now I can laugh, and now I can smile at it. But laughter is a great way. It is one of the great ways, but it's not integral to the process that in my experience.
I think when you have these, eye-opening moments and these aha moments, I think we all have them. I think that's a really key thing to recognize. And some people choose to accept them. Some people kind of shuffle them away. You recorded it. you decide to say, like, okay, I'm going to start doing this, and bam, here it is. And, that's why, I've always kind of viewed how you speak to people and think about your journey, through the radio show stuff, through, the comic tours, the TV stuff,
40 years.
Yeah. It's like you've had what most would be like, hey, that's a successful career. You always stayed working. You were always ahead of the thing. You always said something exciting to get, you could always make a phone call. You could always, get yourself there. And then, I think sometimes we pack on the work because we're like, yeah, if I just took 10 minutes to do that, maybe I would have done it completely different. But isn't it a blessing that you had 40 years of this?
It's a blessing only in that what it did for me, in that it got me to this point where I asked, what's this all about? Yeah. That's the only blessing. And in and of itself, it's nothing. The 40 years, it's nothing.
Yeah.
But the purpose of it is what is meaningful to me. I could have used the purpose to serve, meaningless outcomes. Some of them were, more money, fancier cars, more relationships, more booze, more drugs, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I used it like a toy. Like, kid didn't know what kind of toy he was playing with. And then it got so difficult. It was even in the midst of all the success. I like to say the first part of success is suck, because a lot of it does really suck. Jim Carrey says it all the time. He said, I wish everybody could be famous for 15 minutes to know that this ain't it. And case in point, when I was about 11 years into my career, I had a #1 television show. We were beating Saturday Night Live. I was the host. I was making stupid money, the kind of money you weigh, you don't count.
Right.
And I was on a tour for the network, the then fledgling Fox network. They were flying us all over the country to promote this show. Wow. I was getting $1,000 per diem. I had an assistant paid for by the studio, my wardrobe, limos. It's ridiculous. And one night, we were in Seattle, and I was at the Four Seasons hotel suite looking out over the Seattle skyline. And I had just finished a day of promotion, and I forgot my bathrobe. So I called down to the front desk. I need a bathrobe, $300 for a bathrobe. And this was back in 89, 90. Yeah, no problem. Send it up. 2 waiters come up, and a T-bone steak and a bottle of Cab. 2 waiters come up in little white jackets and a bow tie. Set it up over there, $50 each, right? I grabbed my knife and my fork. I popped the bottle, and I go, I made it. I don't believe it. And I sat like a Viking, boom, with the knife and the fork, waiting for the joy to rush over me, and just the opposite. I'm looking at the skyline, the foggy skyline of Seattle, and I went, and this sick, sinking feeling with a literal voice that said, this is not it. And it was probably the first real panic attack I ever had. I remember sitting there going, what? No, this can't be, no. No, this is it. If this is it, but it's not, it wasn't feeling it. I'm going, what's going on here? Something's wrong. And I got so scared because I knew in that instant, if I was wrong about that, I was wrong about everything.
Yeah.
Well, I was wrong about everything, but I couldn't face it. So I grabbed the bottle, I chugged half of it, I went to sleep, and I pushed it away. But that was the first crack in the armor.
Yeah.
And you know, conditioning and habituation kept me chunking through it. And there were little victories along the way. After that, more, and then it fall, and then it fall, and then ultimately a collapse where I went, this is insane. This is insane. What is this? And it was at that moment when I dropped in everything, and I said, okay, God, whatever, because I didn't believe in anything, you know, other than I can do this and I'm going to be famous at it.
Right.
If you're there, if you're really there, you need to show me, because I don't get this.
Oh, the challenge, the Lieutenant Dan challenge.
That's
you're
right.
You're up on the top of the mast.
Come on!
Right?
Yeah.
You're hanging on.
I was hanging on.
So where did you go from there? So not necessarily, I mean, did you start to reconcile a creator at that point, or was it, how did they make the presence
at that
known?
point, I knew that whatever I was doing, whatever I was projecting and focusing and moving toward, was not working. That was absolutely clear, and I was at least willing to be shown another way.
Yeah.
And when I did, and I really meant it. You know, there were other times I went, okay, God, if you give me this money, and I bargained with the universe.
No.
This was the first time, and it's interesting, if you hyphenate the word bargain, you get to bargain.
Yeah.
I remember the first time someone pointed that out to me, and I went, oh my God.
Yeah, you didn't, it's funny in counseling, you hear that a lot, because it's that bargaining thing. It's, you know, you triangulate things, so you bargain with it, and you're like, you know, okay, well, if I don't spend time with this person, but I'm getting ahead at work, or I'm doing this, and it's, you know, my pros and cons, like, you know, sure, I've got 100 people to you know, have a crowd for, but is it really the work? Well, I need this 100 people. I need, you know, and it's really ego. I mean, at the end of the day, what you're talking about is ego. And then there's the spiritual ego, which is kind of this like, okay, you have to take pride and you have to know that you're worthy to get yourself there, wherever there is, to be able to speak to this. And you can't do that if your alter ego, if your human ego, you know, the Freud ego is like there going, you know, I made it. This is a T-bone steak. Well, your spiritual ego is going, what are you doing? Your spiritual ego poked in and sat there and went, dude, this isn't it. This is okay. Your ego is cloud nine. Your spiritual ego kind of poked its head in and said, this is a redirection. And by the way, most of the time when we hear our spiritual ego start to come in, that's where addiction jumps in. That's where hey, I'm going to forget this night. Hey, I'm going to completely still, whether it's through willful arrogance or willful ignorance rather, or if you're really purposefully saying this is the way I want to be, it doesn't go away, does it? Like it still keeps showing up. Because you were saying there were a couple of things.
A couple of things. That's what I initially regretted, in that once I opened up and I said, I'm willing to be shown. What I thought was, I thought, you know, there were going to be, you know, trumpets and angels and all that other stuff. And what I found initially, to my great dismay, was, no, you have to look at everything you've put in the way between waking up and staying in the dream. And everything that I was holding on to was keeping me anchored to the dream.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's like the light has always been here. You've just been focusing on darkness. It's never been anything else. So another show, even though I had an idea of what spirituality was going to be like, I was completely clueless. And for a while I did have and probably do, had a spiritual ego, but I'm pretty good at recognizing my quote unquote spiritual ego, because that's the part of me that wants to jump back on Facebook and see how many people liked my great new spiritual
Nope,
insight.
That's regular ego.
Whatever it is, it's not the answer. You can categorize it however you like, but I know that if I'm not in it, it's really very, at this point in my life, it's very simple. If I'm not contented, calm, and basically peaceful, if it's anything else, that's the canary in the coal mine. If it's anything other than that, I know I'm engaging again with the little self. So I've really distilled it down to a very simple process for me. There was a lot of noise in the beginning where I had to let you know, it's like shaking up a snow globe. It takes a little while for all those little particles
Right.
to come down and settle down before you go, oh, I didn't know that was there. It was always there. I was throwing up my particles.
Yeah.
I never, you know, I was like, oh, so when I stir up the mud,
Yeah.
that's when I lose sight of it. So as soon as I start to stir up the mud, I go, okay, that's it. You know, let it go right now.
Why do you think, you know, you have that moment of uncomfortability when all the snowflakes hit the ground? You're like, ooh, you know, you hit that realization. What made you go back into that and really start to explore that? The idea of consciousness, the idea of enlightenment, the idea of spirituality. And it's not defined by a book necessarily. There are books to help. But, you know, what became your, you know, your primer? What became your direction? Was it how you
Suffering.
felt? Yeah.
Suffering, pain.
Yeah.
Pain, my story. It became intolerable.
Yeah.
No matter what I did in the world, the pain and the suffering was intolerable. I could not mask it anymore. That was initially one of the things I regretted when I threw it out there and I said, please show me. I was being shown, yeah, you've been causing yourself this pain and this suffering ever since you chose to come into a body. And I mean, it goes even beyond, it goes, for me, ontologically speaking, it goes past childhood, which was a big, big step for me to take, to say, what?
Yeah.
I mean, it's even greater than this. Like, I even chose who my parents were going to be, what situations, what life circumstances I was going to have. When it started to be indicated that there's a much greater spheres of awareness, that myself, my big ass self, was much greater and grander than I ever could have imagined. That really started to scare the shit out of me, because I was a raised Catholic.
Right.
I didn't believe what I couldn't see. And I was kind of like the show me guy, and there was nobody else around that was going, you too? Yeah, I get it. No, I was like, I was stumbling through this ad hoc and trusting that what I was getting was accurate. But who am I going to tell?
Yeah.
I couldn't have this conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't have, if someone had tried to have the conversation with me, I would have went, okay, it's good talking to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, lose my number. So I kept it to myself.
Yeah.
I kept it to myself until now. I feel confident enough to speak about it, where I can meet people I can intuit the level that people are on, and I will, if it feels right, I will offer them whatever I feel is worthy of offering. Sometimes I don't bring it up at all. Sometimes we'll just talk about sports, or we'll talk about the color of your car.
It's such a guy thing.
Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny in this work. I get asked this all the time. You know, what's the demographics? And like 98% women. It's probably more like 90% now, because I think more men are starting to like get in touch with this. But you're saying a whole bunch of stuff here, and I want to really kind of point out the dynamic of this whole kind of like choosing into your life. You know, choosing into your consciousness, choosing into this body. You know, this is, you know, it lends credence to talking about things like, you know, past life, your Akashic records, your soul contract, you know, all of the things that you know, growing up, I was also Irish Catholic. You know, I was born and raised this way. I was the kid that was always on the altar. I was always the altar boy. I was always, you know, the kid that would teach Sunday school. I was that person. And, you know, through my course of events, I got pushed out of that, because they didn't, you know, like the fact that I would talk about Buddha, and they didn't, you know, like that I would be like, well, there's other things out here. So those spheres started growing for me, and that group that only liked that sphere didn't want me to be a part of it. I was crushed. But then it was the best thing for me.
Our sphere, or get out.
Yeah, listen, and it's funny when it's the now former bishop calling you at 11 o'clock at night going, never teach anything again in any of my churches. So it was like, okay, you know, it was a great moment, actually. When I look back, it's kind of that funny thing when you look back on it. But in the moment, I'm hanging up the phone, my knees are shaking. I'm like, my mom's gonna kill me. Like, you know, what'd you do now? I let you have the long hair, and now you get kicked out. And I'm like, that's what Jesus wanted me to. But it's, you know, how much exploration have you done into, you know, choosing your parents, your past life? I mean, you know, do you feel that you've brought some of that, whatever pain lesson connection from what you've been through before as an energetic being?
The short answer is yes, or actually that's the penultimate answer. The penultimate answer is yes, and the ultimate answer is yes, and it doesn't matter.
Excellent.
Yeah, because a line that I read once from the Course in Miracles really took me years to let it unfold within me. Can't even say I wrapped my mind around it, because that's what my mind would want to do, wrap around it and focus on it. But I had to understand what it was saying. And it kind of blew me away, because I had this concept of consciousness, what it is, what it isn't, what we do with it. And this line flattened me. It said consciousness was the first split introduced into the separation, erroneously, or after the separation. Consciousness was the first split. So consciousness itself is also, to a degree, a mistake, because you have to be conscious of something before.
Correct.
Right.
So it's a frame of reference conversation.
It's a frame of reference. It's
right.
a structure in which we choose to turn away from the light. So even the structure of consciousness itself, at the highest level, at its highest level, all it can go to is true perception. Not to say that that's a bad thing. And at the highest level, true perception is close enough to reality from what I've seen that suddenly the shift can be made. As the Course likes to say, then the last step will be taken by God himself. So my goal here with my exploration into consciousness is to, as I see it, is to move through these spheres of awareness, filtering out past lives, filtering out psychic abilities, filtering out, exploring with, using them. They're all great, understanding my past lives, maybe a future life, but understanding, regardless of all of that, the only place it's undone is right now.
Right now.
Is right here in this moment.
Unfinished.
That's all that matters, is right here, this moment. So I love the whole, I did the chanting and the retreats and the meditations and all worthy stuff. It's all part of consciousness. And the idea is, from what I can see at this stage, get as high as you can in your ability to perceive. And at that point, you're going to be snatched out of it. And then, as the Course says, the world was over long ago. I read that line over and over and over again, and I thought it was just kind of an intriguing insight. It literally means that. It says you are reviewing mentally what has already gone by. And now that makes the mind go blank, and then it actually makes it erupt and react and go, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's total bullshit.
I'm right here. I just pinched myself. Right.
And then there's something much deeper that says, 100% correct.
Yeah, because you get there. And
I get it. I'm seeing it. And I have trouble sometimes reconciling the two perspectives, but that's because there's an I, there's a me here trying to reconcile. And then I go, oh, drop the reconciler.
Yeah, you try. It's reconcile, rationalization, justification. They're all human traits that we do. Like I was saying before, like I'll do this instead of that, but if I do that, it brings me happiness and it makes me a better whatever. And we go through that. When you truly get conscious, it's no longer. My favorite thing about becoming more conscious is I no longer have expectations of things.
That's a waypoint.
It's a
real waypoint.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where, to me, and I still have them. When I order my coffee at the drive-thru, I kind of need that to be right. But it's the Bob Ross perspective of, happy mistakes. I didn't want almond milk, but I got almond milk. I guess the universe is telling me to drink more almond milk, right? But on the other side of that, when you have expectations of people, so much of our disappointment, and again, this turns very Buddhist very quickly, but it's not so much a linear thought anymore. It's more of just a truth that you can wrap your head around, and that is, when I don't have expectations of someone, they can't fail me, right? But when they exceed an expectation that wasn't even there, then it just is. It's just, it goes back to the same point that you had made, that it's like, okay, well, just, it was fantastic that you did that, but it's fantastic that it just was. And it's no longer good or bad. And I think that we get polarized so easily. You look at what goes on with political cycles and buy this and do that. Every single thing we ever purchase is based on fear. I'm afraid I won't have this. I need that car. If I don't get a house, there's some.
If I don't take
fear.
a breath.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there you go. I mean, it's that in the 1960s they did an experiment as to why people yawn. They thought it was actually a psychosocial thing, and they put people in a room or a cafeteria, and they just observed and said, kind of do one of those, and then 5 minutes later they watch one person yawn, then the next person yawn, and the next person yawn, and what they came up with was that it got to a fight or flight thing, thinking that there was competition, like, oh, they're stealing all my air, so I should hurry up and get this air. But the reality is you're not out of air. There's plenty of it. That's kind of how energy works too. There's plenty of it. It will always rekindle. It will always generate.
The ultimate reality is you don't need air.
Keep going.
The ultimate reality is you don't need air. You don't need food. You don't need water. The body is a need machine. You are not your body. It took me, I'd heard those statements. I read them. I read through them. I read over them. I read around them. There was the answer all my life, all my life of this conscious journey. Simple. All of these bodily needs are a distraction. They're a distraction against the truth. The truth is simple, but the seeker of truth is complicated. The one that starts the journey is not going to be the one that finishes it.
Never.
But the one that starts out the journey, it has to be that way. It's the path of the initiate. You do have to start the journey. When you recognize it's a journey without distance, and what you're surrendering, not only did you never want, it never existed. That's the part that really makes the mind, I don't even want to say go blank, go quiet, because the human mind was literally made, not created, literally made to keep you blinded from the truth of who you are. Literally. And the only way that I can say that with great certainty is not because I read it 100,000 times, which I did. I actually now know it to be, in my experience, reflective of the truth. It is not the truth, because if it was the truth, we wouldn't be speaking.
Right.
There'd be nothing here.
Right.
But it's reflective of the truth. So my passion, it's the only word that fits, at this stage of my life is to be a walking reflection of what's true.
Yeah.
That's the goal. I will care and tend to the body for whatever it needs may be. I'm not going to make it bad or evil or even great. Either one of those is bad, but I recognize that everything, every single thing in the phenomenal universe is a gigantic smokescreen against the truth.
Yeah. And it's
everything in form. Nothing so blinding as perception of form. A line from the Course that it took me years to absorb that line and have it actually become part of my awareness. But I thought, I was like, well, that sounds really deep. What does that mean? Now I know what it means.
How's that T-bone steak now?
What steak?
No,
Steak.
It was a 35-minute setup. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. You're welcome. Yeah, you see that? Meanwhile, I almost bit and went, the one that you...
Yeah.
But it's...
Never happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It never happened.
It still had impact on you, though.
And
doesn't that create the ripple effect within you?
You're moving on the assumption that there's a me sitting here. And this is where it gets into the snake swallowing itself.
Yeah.
It grabs a hold of its tail.
Infinity.
Right. Exactly. This conversation is really a monologue. The best example I've ever seen of one of these conversations was between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, who's an avowed atheist.
Yeah.
It was about 6 hours long.
Wow.
They were both essentially, if not exactly, stating the same case, but one was from the perspective of there's God and the other is an atheist. And as I'm watching this magnificent conversation, it was building like a symphony into an incredible experience. These two great minds, I wasn't watching two people anymore. I was watching consciousness itself undo itself from the myriad of distractions that had made it forget it was the truth, that it was love. And I went, oh, don't stop, don't stop.
Because when you get fed like that, you just want more. I mean, I see this with students all the time. Once they get like an epiphany, and then they ride it out. I go, well, that's your reality right now. Your connection with someone, whether it be, whether they do readings or whether they do, healing energy work or whatever the case may be. You did go work today. You're going to tie it off. You're going to come back tomorrow, because that's how we're built as humans. We compartmentalize it day to day, so don't overthink it any more than that. But when you see an argument like that, doesn't that then kind of create, the lexicon of how human faith is, how human the concept of God, or, you've got one side constructing an argument for and one against, and the reality is that neither one of them can prove their point. And isn't that what faith is?
What faith is? I can't say what faith is, but I know that everyone has faith. But faith in nothing leads to madness. I can say I'm pretty sure faith does not exist really, because what would the faithful need in heaven? Why would you need faith? Faith, hope. Yeah, you wouldn't need those things. The point I'm making is I'm trying to answer the question without becoming too esoteric. I believe that faith, when properly used, because people are non-consciously using it, they're placing their faith in small things. They're placing their faith in mindless things. Faith, mindfully used, I think, is not only powerful. I know it's necessary in this life. It's a tool I use, and I use hope is one of those words. I used to say that hope is a taxi cab you take across town from doubt to belief, but even belief changes. Where the word lie is right in the middle of it. But faith, if used properly, is a very powerful tool indeed. And as long as we are what we consider to be conscious beings, we're going to need faith to ascend to true perception. We need to have faith that there's something greater than us, allowing us to expand in those spheres of awareness till we reach true perception. And at that point, from everything I've read, the universe goes, and you're gone. And you, as the Course says, you disappear into the heart of God. Past there, I can't speak. And the tidbits it gives, it says things like, and you want to go, ah!
Yeah, because you're like,
stop!
You couldn't fit. Would you run out of ink?
Yeah, it says we say God is, and then we cease to speak.
Yeah.
Fuck!
Yeah, you're like,
don't leave me here!
Thanks for the hint.
What are you doing?
But isn't that the way? Isn't that really fitting for a full bookend conversation? Because when God came in, He didn't create; He spoke. So it's sound. So at the end,
when did God come in, and where did He come in from? That's my point.
Exactly. So it doesn't
always has no direction.
The snake has eaten itself,
and now it's gone.
Right.
So what's left? These concepts, when you start to follow them, they lead to nothing, in the sense that no thing. You go, the mind, if it's done correctly, the mind will quiet, the heart will open up, and I don't even say appropriate thing, the only thing you can say is, thank you, I love you.
Yeah.
Thank you, I love you.
Isn't I love you sheer consciousness? When you follow along, the steps of consciousness, when you reach, and by the way, the steps of consciousness really have the same dialogue steps that you would think that something in progress as humans would have. In other words, you have the part of self-realization. You have the idea of really kind of, ultimately getting to a place where you're fully committed to being open and of servitude. Your bodies are really, truly the serviceable vehicle to get you from point A to point B, which is what the intention is.
I'm still on your question.
It's all right, bud. It's all good.
I'm still on that question.
Well, good. It means it's a good question, right?
No, it's a good question.
What else you want to share about it?
There's it's a great mind quieter.
Yeah, it's
just it shuts down the chatter.
And isn't that kind of our goal? And how about this? Where are we actually elevating to? Like, what are we ascending to? You've mentioned ascension a few times, and consciousness really is an ascension. What do you think we're ascending to?
I don't know that I use that word, but it's appropriate. Whatever it is, I can sense it. I can't say for sure specifically, and even trying to describe it, put it into words, already dumbs it down.
Yeah.
I remember when the Hebrews used to say you cannot name the Holy of Holies. It wasn't because it was a sin. You literally can't name it. The minute you form a word, it becomes a form, and it has now become a symbol of a symbol. That makes it twice removed from reality.
Correct.
So my experience with this process has been at the highest levels of consciousness. There's nothing but, this is what and I can only tell you what my body looks like, because this is how my expression of that experience is. It's it's like this for hours, and you just go, it's almost like, please stop, it's too good.
Yeah.
It's too much. I can't take it. I literally, there have been times where it's so magnificent. I know that I have to still do work in the body. It's almost depressing. It comes on in waves, and it washes away everything. And the room disappears. I disappear. And when I finally got to come, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? And it's like, there's this invitation, and at the same time the realization, you still got some stuff to do here. This is what you're going for. Yeah. This is not even it. This is only the edge. This is just these are the gates of heaven. That's not even heaven.
Yeah. So you get to the understanding of, of consciousness, that it's, and it's funny, our human perception needed us to get the whole, what does heaven look like? Our human part of it needed to know that it's a reward, or it's 77, whatever the eternal question gets answered with. But the more that you dive into this, not only did we get it wrong in human text, maybe it's not even for our minds to fully comprehend, but to be the MacGuffin of, like, it's not a map, it's a compass. We keep trying to put it to a map, but the reality is that it is a compass. And so long as you have the direction, then you're in the right, you're in the right way. Not even in the right path, but you're in the right way.
And from my perspective, just to differentiate between the mind and the mind with a capital M, the mind, which made the world, which made the phenomenal universe, that's the mind that is a byproduct of what Christianity would call the original sin, or the original error, as the Course talks about.
Right.
And ontologically speaking, the Course addresses the Big Bang Theory with one line that any Course student knows. You know the line I'm going to use, right? Into eternity, where all is one, there crept a tiny mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. Kaboom! You think you're separate. Here's your ability to experience that you think you're separate. And it goes on to say, in the Course, it says, the only need you need to heal here is your sense. It's not even a real thing. It's a sense of separation from God. That's it.
Yeah.
So as far as the faith, I believe that as faith, again, properly used, will direct us toward that experience where we can continually start to erode the sense of separation, because my experience is that it is a process. Yeah. I have met people and seen people, Ramana Maharshi, that had that pop, that had it drop from them.
Yeah.
And I've seen other great teachers, great sages and saints who had that pop. For me, it's a bit of a slog.
Yeah.
But
right.
I have my role models now. I see what it looks like in form to experience essence. I look at a Ramana Maharshi. I read about Jesus, a guy like Muji. I don't know if you're familiar with Muji. And I just think, okay, I see now, because not only do I see it in them, I'm feeling it within myself. Yeah. It's what inspired me to start these little videos.
Yeah.
It was a tiny little,
like, hey, somebody needs to hear this today.
Correct.
And it's not even hearing, like, boy, I hope somebody hears this today. Right? You get handed this, and you're like, two people are gonna watch this. One of them's gonna go, hey, John, and then the other one's gonna go, John. And you're just like, okay, that's my target audience. And it's funny, I've had this challenge. I've had those struggles where I'm like, I want 1,000 people, and I want, but it doesn't go right. And I've had my, I call them tower moments. That's a reference to the, to
Towering Inferno.
yeah, well, it is actually. Actually, it's to the tarot deck, because in the tower,
Okay, yeah.
that's where the external force comes in and it says, "Oh, you're doing this wrong." Your tower moment, and it doesn't necessarily have to be catastrophic. Your tower moment came in the form of T-bone steak and in a
There were a lot
terror
more, but that was the first one.
But it's the one you're okay with sharing, and that's where, when I had mine, it's where I looked around and I thought, boy, I've really made it. No. And then you go on this other path where you're like, okay, you have to reconcile it, because you still have the human experience. You still have to deal with the human stuff. I still have to deal with the people that are around me, the decisions that I made, the checks that I wrote, all that stuff. You still got to go back and go, all right, you remember that whole thing? Yeah, I kind of scrubbed that. How do you think we rationalize, or not even rationalize, but how do you keep your beacon going towards consciousness when you've got all this human stuff thrown at you? Because it's built up, because it's almost, in hindsight, you can go back and go, oh, I built this the wrong way because this is just not reality. Now that I have more information, I should have done it differently, but you still got to deal with what you were doing differently before.
The answer to that is easy. You drop you.
Keep going.
You don't keep it going. You drop you and see the beacon was always there. You weren't looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
You drop yourself, and David Hawkins said he had an 11-day process where he surrendered. He surrendered every thought that came to mind. He surrendered. I surrendered to thee, my Lord. I surrendered to thee, my Lord. I surrendered to thee. An 11-day process. I don't know if he fasted through that, but he didn't. He didn't stop. He was relentless in his quest. He surrendered, and then ultimately surrendered the surrenderer. And that sounds like a play on words, and a couple people might, right? Some people may have caught it, but when that sweet surrender happens, and it's a process for me, ongoing. He's one of the guys who popped through it. So there's the light. It's always been there.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I've just been facing away from the sun. I've only been seeing my shadow. It's so simple. It's initially, when the first few times, the simplicity of it, the beauty and the simplicity of it actually caught my attention. It literally took my breath away, because I didn't realize until that time that my power of attention, my power to discern, and my free will, when aligned with God's will, is literally fucking unstoppable.
Yeah. Nothing
can stop it, and that's not a high-minded platitude. I'm not joking. That's the real deal.
Yeah.
And so my job as a human is to allow the being part of a human,
yep,
to emerge more fully, because I was more concentrated on the human. So now my being is greater. The human's down here, where before the human was here and the being was what? Oh, that's just a name attached to the human part.
Yeah. Where you're just like, yeah, I'm along for the ride. I'm a hitchhiker. I'm just paying attention. I'm just, getting from point A to point B. And it's amazing. What you're talking about is really kind of the aha moment where you do piece it together, and it's, you look at everything in the world, whether it doesn't matter what it is. I get asked again about politics, and
go Trump.
Cut. But then there's also the conditioning that you see that you have to undo, and that's why I think it's sometimes painful.
And that's the purpose of a miracle. It undoes it for you. You don't do anything.
I'm saying that.
Yeah, you don't do anything. It's undone for you. That's what grace is. It's an aspect of God's love that I've experienced that is so close to heaven. You're just a breath away.
Yeah.
It's undone for you.
Yeah, I like the idea that you're, the things of the past, and again, it's going back to the whole undone part of it, of the pieces that you have, but it's also unfinished, because it's always going to evolve. It's always going to take on another form. It's always going to have another aha. It's always going to have another. What is, your consciousness, it's always going to have that next step, and it's not finished. That's part of the key to being conscious, is that it's unfinished.
And that's what makes it unreal. But that's what makes it unreal.
isn't that the way to go?
When you recognize that, the whole purpose of consciousness is to awaken from consciousness into isness. I get it. You have to, you still have to climb the ladder before you get to the top rung. But as you're doing it, you can understand that, the goal is not to get to the highest level. The goal is to realize there was never anybody climbing in the first place. If you can,
of one. Right.
Neo.
Right. You're no longer right. You're no longer, once you realize that it's not a competitive balance, that it's really just a, how am I going to, do this? I mean, you talk to I work with a lot of business people that would consider themselves business leaders. And, they almost all adopt the same philosophy. I'll get a Post-it note, I'll put it up on my computer, and these are my goals. This is what I need to do. The ones that have to remind themselves, those are great. Those are taskmasters. Those are people who are going to get the job done. They're great on paper. The ones that really make a difference are the ones that put the things on there that are conscious. In other words, they'll say things like, I need to be kind when I'm in the elevator today, or I need to look into that payroll issue 3 months ago that I assumed it was taken care of, but I want to be conscious that person had something satisfactory. It's still in the business world and there's still ramifications to it, but it's that step that a lot of them take to be able to say to themselves, this is what it means to be more conscious. I'm actually aware of this. I'm conscious of my actions. I realize my position and the influence I could have. And you had mentioned something early on about Eddie Murphy going, hey, that guy's funny. And you were on cloud 9 with it. Was the moment of consciousness? Wasn't that a way?
I believe it occurred in consciousness. I mean,
Right.
You have to have conscious. You have to have something to be conscious of. It was a subject-object kind of a duality.
Yeah.
When I retell that story, yes, I was on cloud 9. From where I am now in my life, the question would be, who was that I who was on the cloud 9?
Yeah.
And once I look at that I look at the lens through which I was perceiving, and then I go, okay, there's a lens. I'm looking at me. Who is looking? And what eye am I looking at? Again, Ramana said, the eye removes the eye and yet remains the eye. It's one of those seeming paradoxes, yet it's a seeming paradox, where as you are willing to be shown, the greater eye will gently sieve away the little eye. And one day you'll say, we say God is, or you'll say I am, and you will cease to speak.
Yeah.
So I look at all things now in that perspective of who am I? Who do I still? And I understand I still have a body and I still have to function in 3-dimensional reality. But my perspective is in a much wider, broader place. Where again, I'm going to quote Ramana. He said, this was such a profound insight. He said, I allow my human life to unfold according to the nature of its own destiny, yet I remain as I am. Whoa.
Yeah.
Forget game changer, game over, board closed up, gone.
Yeah. It all falls apart around you and you still are.
What a profound insight.
It's no longer about whether or not you're right or wrong then. It's no longer about taking the right steps. It's actually forgiveness and acceptance all at once. That's literally what you're talking about.
It's the alpha and the omega.
Yeah.
It's the circle of life. It's over at that point. It's over. And what he did was he remained in form, or his part of him remained in form. And people were simply drawn to the magnificence that was being reflected through this broken down, spindly old body. And he rarely spoke. In fact, he preferred silence over teaching. He said, silence is the best teacher. And I have to say, I've found that to be true in my life. When I really need to, if I'm feeling stressed or frustrated in a situation, I recognize I already have what I need.
Yeah.
The little me is running around again. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I did it again. No big deal. Don't beat myself up over it. Get it.
Yeah.
But I see what the way out now.
Yeah, and it's funny that here's a couple of guys that talk for a living. Like that's what we do. Like we talk, right? Like we communicate constantly. But and it's how we, both got to wherever it is that we've gotten in life. And the reality is that in order to really start to grow again, you had to be quiet. And so it's almost like even built in our own dichotomy, we're recognizing that, it's like, shut up for a second. Like I literally, when I was like, okay, I think I made it. This is the best. I'm looking out over this, whole thing. And I realized that like, I literally heard like, you were supposed to do this alone, not carry all these people with you. I heard that. It was like, the wrong people are involved. The people that are into this now, you have to let them go. That was profound for me because I wasn't doing the work here.
I know that situation,
Mm.
and I've been through it. And again, I think to look at it, who was hearing it, who said it. You've set up, and I understand people need guidance here. But when you say that I heard it, and heard it infers somebody spoke it to you, you immediately set up a duality where there's a push pull, yin yang.
Yep.
And that's human nature. That's what this world is. You can't deny that we believe we're in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But the perspective of works like the Course and teachings of a Ramana,
Mm-hmm.
they all come from a non-dual perspective, which would guide you back to
right.
Who heard it, who said it.
Yeah.
Those are the questions that make you go.
Yeah.
That's the work. Initially, yes, this is also the work. It's so subtle, the distinction. Most people never ask. Well, I remember the first time someone pointed that out to me. They said, who is it that's asking that question? Initially you go, it's me. Who are you? And they just kept saying it. And I just was like, every time I turned that back onto myself, I think it just, my mind just went blank.
Yeah. Because because you also, that's the justification in this world where you're like, that's why you shut it down, because you knew you were going to get asked at some point. On the other side of this, even in that moment, yes, the duality, yes, all of that, but that's my human jolt needed to happen for me to hear that, for me to, so the whether it's the unconscious or the reality that I was facing, maybe it was just in 3D, but it was sent from 5D. My soul hasn't done anything wrong. My human self was going, this is why you're not happy. This is why you're not paying attention to this upper level yet. So I had to hear it in terms of duality because that's how we're trained to think. If you listen to the 4 agreements and the 5th agreement, you talk about how we agree that this is a table and these are chairs because you were taught that. You just agreed with your parents. Okay, it's a chair. I'm not going to argue with you. I want to call it a galunti, but you call it a chair. I want to speak your language. I'll agree to it. We go through life agreeing to it. So, of course, that's how you're going to receive a message. That's why you're going to receive a message in duality like that. Question it all you want, but that's how I needed to receive the message. Then on the other side of that, I know what the goal was. I know the goal was consciousness. I know that the goal was to be like, you're sitting down here with the swines and you're supposed to be flying up here with the crows. Hey, get out of the muck. That's what I was hearing. My human self needed to hear that so that I could wake up the consciousness. Just like you sitting there with the snake going, I thought this would be different.
It was a necessary lever arm in the ascension of my personal evolution, without a doubt.
Yeah.
That being said, I recognize that at this point, to use your example as a table, we agree that this is a table. What we did, where we diverge, is the purpose of this table.
Mm.
That's
right.
And someone who's in the field that you're in, you're on the leading edge of the, if you will, the evolution of consciousness. For me, the purpose of this table, this table demonstrates separation. I am separate from this table.
Right.
I recognize now that everything in this room is a symbol that demonstrates I believe in separation.
Yeah.
So Now the table hasn't changed, but I give it a new purpose.
I was just going to say, this is about self-purpose.
This is the new purpose is to see everything as an expression of what's in the mind of the perceiver. And when I say the mind, I'm not talking about the brain. I mean, the mind that created this stuff, this experience.
Yeah.
So as I, even obviously this conversation, as I progress in my own process, I'm keeping in mind that everything here is purposive, and that when I do keep that in the forefront, what happens for me is really life is just happening. There's no doer here. Like for years, I took credit for all this stuff that I was doing, and I noticed that when I started to look at who I thought was doing it, and I kind of let go of that person, I was like, you know what, life is just emerging, and I'm kind of a neutral witness, and I have almost nothing to do with what's happening. So that's why when I look at stuff like this, to use your example of a table, we agree that it's a table, but we don't agree to not you.
I understand.
Rhetorically, it has a different purpose.
Here going all human, like I don't want to piss this guy off. He gets a head of steam towards me, and I might lose. But I see what you're saying, because it's no longer about, when you start to kind of, and you brought this up a few times, like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
No.
When it comes to this. What are some of the activities that you do on a regular basis that keep you growing in the consciousness? Like what are the specific things that you do?
I stay aware as possible, open, tolerant, gentle, patient. I try to stay as cognizant as possible of my human misguided impulses, and I'm really good at derailing them now. Like it's hard not to use concepts that we've had our whole life, but there are literally times when it's running on autopilot. It's kind of like I'm literally watching this body I know as John, like going through its day, and I'm in a 360-degree panorama. Then there are days where I get up and I really feel constricted. So what I do on a regular, and in the body, and my shoulder hurts and I got to go to therapy and I got to do this and I got to do that. So my quote unquote practice is recognizing that I'm recognizing.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. Just stay with it. Stay here, stay looking, stay observing. And then whatever needs to happen emerges organically. And I know instantly, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I don't, there's no stress about it. There's nothing.
Yeah. It's, I have found that the more that I work with, being mindful in the moment and that sort of thing is really critical to this. But it's hard to do, especially at first, because I think we're so conditioned. You have to deconstruct. It's a deconstruction. And it's funny that word came across to me when I was watching the Food Network, and all they do is talk about deconstructing food. Like I deconstruct it when I'm eating it. Like that's my idea of deconstruction. But
let me deconstruct some cabbage for you.
Yeah, right. There you go. Thank you very much. Aren't you glad this isn't smell-o-vision? So but my point being is that like you start to kind of work backwards, and you're like, and you catch yourself. And in therapy and traumas and that sort of thing, you talk about triggers, right? And you
did I talk about triggers?
No. But somebody that comes out of counseling, or a counselor will talk about triggers. Like, hey, did you notice that every single time somebody objects to you, you get offended, or you curl up in a shell, or whatever the thing is. We have that little bit of kind of human nature piece of it has just that little bit of trauma reaction to it all the time. And I think consciousness makes you aware of like, why did I react that way? That's really where I'm getting at with this. What made me react that way? And you start to realize that most of it is actually conditioning. It is routine, that sort of thing. I think how
I believe that's in effect conditioning. The cause is guilt.
Keep going.
The cause is guilt. Again, I'm going to go with the mythology set forth by A Course in Miracles, because the one thing about A Course in Miracles, which is different than all other non-dualistic teachings, is the Course in Miracles actually gives you the mythology behind why we believe we're here in this separated world. It's the only one. There's great other, Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta teachings. There's this philosophy and speculation, but the Course actually lays out a mythology as to how the world was made.
Yeah.
And it basically said the mind split 4 times, or appeared to split.
Right.
There was the moment where a creation of God said, I wonder what it would be like to be separate. Boom. 2 ideas emerged with that. One was, there is no separation, come back home. The other one was, if you separate, you're in big trouble. We better go run and hide.
Duality.
The 4th split was the world.
Yep.
Where it now, as the Course describes it, the double shield of oblivion fell.
Right.
The phenomenal universe covered the mind. We literally became mindless. And now the 2 belief systems were still potential in our mind, but the one that made the world, not created.
Right.
The one that made the world was guilt, sin, and fear. The guilt of having turned away from our Creator, having literally killed God, was now projected into the world.
Yep.
And to use the Course, the world is an outside picture of an inward condition. If you think about the world was literally made as an attack on God. Literally.
Yeah.
Everything here is a reflection of attack, judgment, crucifixion, everything.
Yeah.
So the secret dream is, I'm so guilty, I'm so sinful, I'm so fearful. I'll stay hiding in this little body. I have a world where I don't ever have to look at my guilt again.
Yeah.
The real world is our world forgiven, where we go back into our right mind and we say, oh my God, nothing ever happened. I never left. I've been dreaming this entire thing. I never left home. That's the purpose of the miracles. When you've ascended to the place we're talking about with consciousness, the final step is taken by God. The right-minded system, the right-minded way to look at the world, the wrong-minded world,
Yep.
wrong-minded way to look at the world, and the world itself all disappear. And you're back at home where you never left.
And there's a comfort to it that isn't a reward-based system. And that's what I think people have a hard time with that. And a couple of things with what you were saying, when I read that, I couldn't help but think that the whole division and then the division again was really kind of replicating how cells reproduce.
Literally.
It's
a literally reflection of our split mind. Literally.
It's how we came to be. So by being human, are we going to understand this? The fact that we can actually have an intelligent conversation about this, and I don't care if it's on a podcast or in a coffee place or, wherever. It's amazing to me that why are we now able to understand what this consciousness is? I mean, Course in Miracles is a great tool. There's a lot of great teachers out there. Why do you think now is why we're getting here? Like, what couldn't we have had this before we had institutionalized, say, religion or, economy-based, worlds? Why do you think it's getting backloaded like this?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, but the answer would be, if I were asking that question to somebody else who's sitting in my seat, I would like them to say to me, does knowing that help you to stay more in the now? So if I were asking that to someone sitting here, I would want them to go, if I told you the answer to that,
right?
Would that be able? Is that going to help you be here now? Is that going to help you to remove the blocks? If it does, I'll tell you the answer. But if not, the answer is self-evident. So I don't really know the answer. But if you knew it, would it make a difference? Would it make any difference now? Because here's where it's undone anyway. It still requires what we would call a miracle, an undoing of the mind.
I get that argument with it, but I think, for me, I think it's more that we're really kind of barreling towards.
It helps contextually. I do agree.
Yeah,
It does help contextually. And I think to answer that question on a level of form, but again, it's really helpful. And it's only because of the nature of what you do. It's really helpful not to let the metaphysics of this thing get too far away while you're discussing the practical aspects of it.
Right.
You really need to know what's going on in the subconscious mind and why we do inherently the things we do. We go, well, it's just the nature of being human. Yes, but again, it's purposive, like this table. Some people look at it, well, the purpose of this table is to put my cup on it. No, this purpose of this table is for the subconscious mind to project an idea of separation. What?
Yeah.
Big difference. Big difference.
So I think we're reverse engineering this, and I think
Correct.
we're becoming more. I think we're barreling towards. We're no longer going to be in the fourth quadrant. We're going to be moving up to the second to the first. So
as far as the splits are concerned,
in other words, we're becoming reunited. I think that it's the pendulum swing that brings you back to this. That and I guess it's a fair question, and your answer is more than fair. And I think this is where. Not that I'm looking for an expectation, but I've always viewed it as in like, okay, there's a reason why this time of consciousness is coming. If you want to start to impart things like, the astrological events that are kind of coming through this, we're moving towards another age. When you look at the Bible, it's actually an astrological calendar. It happens to be a story of Jesus. That's why when you talk about ascended masters, their existence isn't really what the focus is. Their existence is more of, hey, here's a story and a tale about a model that you should maybe follow. It's not necessarily this guy was hung on a cross, et cetera, et cetera. Astrologically, all of those things line up to astrological events. Now I think we're headed towards this other kind of thing of being aware of things like what's going on the planet, what's going on in the world, how we treat our planet, how we treat one another, how the duality of shift is happening. And I think it's because we're coming to this point where it's no longer going to be, John, I picked up the phone and I called you. It'll be, I'm going to send out a thought pattern because that's how connected we are. And I think that's, and it sounds kind of radical with us, but it's not when you do this work all the time. There was serendipity that I picked up the phone. I saw your video out there and I'm like, I was like that guy. I sent you a message and you're like, I answer like 2 of these a year. And this is the one I say yes to. I want to come up to upstate. Okay, great. There's serendipity connected to that. I think it's tied into this place that we're going where we are going to have this consciousness. And do you feel that, why do you feel some people still ignore this? Why do you feel
fear?
Keep going with that.
Fear. The fear of having to look within. Again, I'm going to defer to what I've learned from A Course in Miracles, because most of the lessons still keep coming back to that.
Yeah.
The unconscious guilt that we have over the idea that we separated from God is so intense. We can deny it, but we can't escape it. Yeah. So what happens is whenever anything, not just whenever anything is repressed, it causes it to reemerge, typically in some unexpected and even more grotesque way. So, but it does really take courage initially to turn and look at at why you think you have fear and understand that it goes way beyond your childhood or past life or some perhaps future life that you think you may have. It really comes back to the original sin, the original error, which was I thought I left my Creator. It all comes back to that. So the wrong way to look at the world is through sin, guilt, and fear, the unholy Trinity, and the right, or what the Course calls the real world, is simply the phenomenal world and the phenomenal universe looking through the eyes of forgiveness, and not forgiveness as we know it to be in the world. This never happened. Forgive because it never happened. Yeah. You're not doing anything per se. You're looking and seeing it never happened. Yeah. So you don't have to do anything in the illusion. You just have to look and see that it's an illusion. Once you awaken from a dream, it's all gone.
Yeah, it's
all gone. The planets, the systems, the belief, the faith, the hope, everything's gone. Once you awaken from the dream, it all goes. And Freud called the state between dreams and waking. He called them dreams of convenience.
Yeah.
When you begin to awaken, when you begin to awaken, you start to incorporate external stimuli into your dream. The phone rings, an alarm goes off, and suddenly it's in your dream, yet it's actually happening in the world.
Yep.
I believe what's happening right now is, and I know it has for me, that we're starting to experience a dream of convenience. People are starting to wake up. So they're still drawing with them into the waking stage things that were pertinent to them in the phenomenal world.
Yeah.
Not bad in and of itself, but they can't go. They're going to have to stay. The illusion, an illusion is an illusion is an illusion. You can't bring that with you to awakening.
Yeah.
It all has to go. I can't go with me with the eye to awakening.
Yeah.
John, if you want to experience the truth, you have to disappear. I have to disappear. That's not only shocking, it's preposterous to most people.
Yeah.
So that's fucking ridiculous. What are you talking about? You're making no sense. You've lost your mind. I've lost my mind in a good way.
Yeah, it's funny that you say lost your mind, because isn't that the goal?
It is the goal.
Isn't that the goal, to become, to become completely divestiture of what you are as a human? And it's so counterintuitive.
Completely counterintuitive.
Because we find our body connected to, our experiences. I did this. I went to this place. I had this food. It's all human things. It's no longer what you've experienced. It's but isn't that the joy of living? Like, how do you find joy in this when you're...
The only way to find joy in a joyless place is to realize that you are not there.
Keep going.
I don't have to. There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. I just said it.
Yeah.
The only way to find joy in a joyless place is to realize that you are not there. The thing to do with the desert is leave.
Yeah.
The end.
It's
stick the landing. Goodbye.
It's no longer part of where you are, but think of the burden that's lifted. And this is the thing I talk to a lot of people about, is that when they have their moments of epiphany and they have their moments, they talk about the joy that they feel through the relief of what they've had in their human body.
Right. And that's a legitimate experience. However, what that relief they feel is relative to what they had and then was released. Like when most people reach a goal in life, what they're not actually experiencing is joy. They're experiencing the release of the stress of having to get that thing.
Right.
Because joy would tell them they never needed it in the first place.
Mm.
Real joy. That's the world's joy. That's the world's happiness. I conquered. I got. And again, they're all reflections of the ontological expression of I triumphed over God. I took from God what he would not give me, like it says in the chorus. You asked of God unreasonable favors, and when he did not grant them, you made of him an unloving father.
Yeah.
We didn't want to be loved. We wanted to be special.
Yeah. Isn't that a funny statement?
It's bizarre. It's fucking, this is special. We're in a special relationship right now, and it's impossible not to be. I get it. I understand in this world, it's impossible or not to be in your face all the time. However, you have to start looking at it like that if you're going to escape the illusion.
Yeah.
Or escape the effects of the apparent illusion, if I want to get really specific about it.
Yeah. Well, don't you think, too, I mean, do you still struggle with this now that you've seen it?
Struggle. Yes, that's probably a good word to use. It takes effort.
Mm.
It takes, practice.
Yeah.
Struggle is probably a good word, but the struggle starts to lessen on it every single time. Even during this conversation, I notice myself wanting to jump in, and I keep doing this, and I'm saying, stay with him, listen, pay attention.
He's taking you to another place. Let him go.
Just don't, and ultimately, let it be what it's going to be. It is what it is. Let it happen. Let's just be. And at times it feels like a struggle.
Yeah. I mean, when you ultimately release and you get there, it's that elation. What would you, for somebody that might be watching this and going like, John, this is a totally different side of you, or, they look up to you for whatever reason, whether it's, hey, I have fond memories of listening to you or seeing you or whatever. And they genuinely ask you for help for this. And I know every circumstance has a different thing, but, as an overall encapsulation, where would you tell them to start?
Depends on the person.
Sure.
That's where you, to your point, intuition. That's where I would really rely on how I felt intuitively. Ken Wapnick used to say all the time, and I love this. He said, the difference between a lie and a white lie is a white lie is not meant to deceive. It's simply the most loving thing a person can experience at that time.
Right.
So you would never tell a 5-year-old that there's no Santa on Christmas Eve. So if somebody came with me and right. So if somebody came with me and they were really stressed, if I would, in essence, I'm not going to take their Santa away from them. Like the Jesus of the course is not the Jesus.
I was just going to say, you have to reconceptualize your.
May I?
Yeah.
No, drop the conceptualization completely. Yeah. Don't reconceptualize, because you're just remolding him into another thought.
Makes sense.
If you're willing to drop all concepts beyond all symbols and all signs, right. If you're willing to do that, you will experience an otherworldly response. It's not like anything you will ever get in this world, and that's how you'll know if you've experienced the peace of God. It's not like anything that ever came before it.
Yeah,
and you won't. I can't even talk about it. I can't even put it into words. There are no words that describe what it is.
Yeah, by nature, I find that when I speak to people about this, it hits a brick wall, because you're just like, I just said it. Like, the same answer applies. But on the other side of this, I think when people begin to, look, and I think what's actually happening, and you're familiar with Merkaba, the flower of life. That's where all of the, all the things are interconnected and they roll into each other. And it's, kind of like a ball of light that just kind of keeps, blending and molding itself into it. I think that what's happening is that the expansion of that is happening as more people become into this. If you and I had the conversation 15 years ago, it would have been completely different. We would have been talking about, something at a completely different level, but we would have been like, in consciousness, it's a whole other thing. What'd you say? And then we would have pulled each other in a little bit, and it would have expanded a little bit more. But now people are beginning to ask questions like that, like, how am I connected? And it's no longer, for me, it's no longer about connecting and talking to dead people. That's actually, that's just a tool in the toolkit in a way. What's more important is kind of like how this connection is happening. And I think it's important, like conversations like this really kind of draw people in to let them know it's okay to explore this and to rethink it. And again, I know the construction thing, it's about letting go. But the first step is saying, oh, I don't have the right tools. I don't have the right basing on this. The second part is expressing how difficult it is, because you've got to look at yourself, because you're the only one that really exists in this part of the journey. And it's a really hard thing.
And there is, in a greater sense, not that you're the only one, there is only one. There's only one of us here. There's one appearing as many.
Yeah.
And that's why I can't leave. I can't go on without you. I can't go on without my brothers, because they show me what's hidden in my subconscious mind. If I did not have you in my life acting as a reflection of what I'm thinking, I wouldn't know that was in my subconscious mind. There'd be nothing on the screen.
It's a validation.
It's actually a reflection. It's not a validation. It's a reflection showing me I never knew I had this thought about you, whether it be good or bad. And here's the thing about any thinking, whether it's good or whether it's bad, they're still thoughts. So take all the good thoughts about yourself and all the bad thoughts you think about yourself. Both are equally untrue.
They're just,
if you're not perceiving correctly, you are hallucinating.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally hallucinating, because I'm looking at the illusion, I'm giving it some value, and I'm stating, not only is this valuable, I am here judging a value. There's two of us, and now you're in the world of form, and now you're lost. So if you are willing, and I am willing, it takes a little willingness, as the Course says, little willingness to be shown that you simply made a mistake.
Yeah.
It's not a sin to be punished.
Yep.
It's an error to be corrected. This will have to merge it back up. You will have to look at it. It'll bubble up. It will get very unpleasant. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
It'll get very unpleasant. And that's where the work begins. When the nights where you're seemingly alone and the ego is raging, it feels like being in a chimney of just every unpleasant thought you can imagine. And to quote Muji, and I just love this quote of his, he says, "Do not fear the fire of God. It will not burn you. It will only burn what you are not." And that's where that's where the work takes place.
And it's true faith at that point.
Yes, it's a combination of things. Sometimes it's just fucking holding on. I can get through this. This doesn't last forever. Which is greater, that which is experienced or the witness experience, the experiencer? When you start to see it like that, you can recognize you are not the bad feeling.
Yeah.
There's already a separation. You're going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's not me.
I think when people really go through a spiritual enlightening or an awakening, they literally begin to lose their bodies. They feel a separation from their soul to their bodies.
Did you ever see the classic picture of Ramana?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
For anyone who doesn't know it, it's
right up. I'll screenshot.
Oh yeah,
it.
okay.
Up there.
He's walking past shiny wet pavement, and he has no reflection. And the first time I met Ken Wapnick, who was responsible for editing and publishing the course, A Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
First time I met him, I'd spoken to him on the phone a few times. I went to Temecula, California. I was actually doing a gig.
Yep.
And it happened to be that the Foundation for A Course in Miracles was
right
2 miles from there.
That's awesome.
So I'd spoken to him a few times on the phone. He came bouncing through the door and he sat on my knee, this knee, a grown man. He I never met him, just a couple of conversations. He bounced through the door. He sat on my knee and I don't remember much of what he said. I just remember being amazed that it felt like there was a half a cup of coffee on my knee. I couldn't believe it. I kept doing this. I'm going, I know he
felt so light.
He was so light.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like moving my leg going, is this a magic trick? Because I'm going, there's a grown man sitting on my knee and I shouldn't that be hurting? I mean, I felt like I could do like this and throw him up into the ceiling.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So yeah, to your point, then that's a story I've told maybe 3 people.
Yeah.
Because they were open to hearing it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying, but
I do.
That's when John D. Martini once said, you can't stick your hand in a pot of glue without some of the glue sticking to you. When you start to transit in the orbit of the teachings of Ramana, of a body of a Muji, of any of the Course in Miracles, it'll just automatically start sticking to you.
Yeah.
And I will never forget. That's still with me.
That's pretty incredible.
When he came out and I'm looking at him and now he was not a big guy. He was slightly built, but still there's like 140, 50 pounds of human on my knee.
Yeah.
And I'm going.
And how about him throwing out all social norms?
Bounced through the door and sat on my knee.
Come on, Sam.
How are you? John, how are you?
Come on, John, let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, what do you need? Yeah. What do you want to know? Yeah. And I was like,
yeah.
Whoa.
How do you think, and this was a good way to, kind of bring us home. How do you think that, like, as you kind of go through this, how has it affected your relationships? How do you look at them differently? What do you change about them coming into it?
Well, I dropped the S. Relationship.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
Keep going.
There's no plural. Yeah. There is one of us here.
Mm-hmm.
How am I treating myself?
Yeah. Is this where I want to be?
How am I treating? Yeah. How am I treating? How am I beaming? Am I peaceful, content? Because there's just one relationship. It's all in the mind. And if I judge and categorize and separate out, if I keep any of that peace from anything or anybody, if I try to alter it in any way, shape, or form, I'm turning it off on myself.
Yeah.
So I look at everything as one grand relationship. It's like
do you go through like step marks?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or you're like, okay, what's this guy about? What am I going to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
the serpent and the dove. I'm still here. I'm, wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. I still have to, maintain. I'm in a form. I obviously recognize that.
Right.
I live in a world of forms, apparently. So I'm going to deal with that, and I'm going to be as smart and as wise about it as possible.
Perfect. That's perfect. All right. Anything else you want to add at all, or anything?
When do I get paid?
As soon as we're done here,
I get my illusory money.
I give you crystals. How do you feel about?
Is she a strip? Crystals, meth.
Oh my god! Cut that out.
Come on, no, that's funny, man.
It is funny.
Humor.
It is funny, but it's one of those things where, when you get connected, when you start to kind of go through this, I mean, I was really taken aback by how subtle what you were saying really kind of brought you through. And I want to encourage you to keep going with this, because it's really, I don't think, the reality is that in this life, you've had impact on people for whatever reason. And now you're taking that impact and you're utilizing it in a way to encourage, to give little tidbits of wisdom. And the beautiful thing about this on the path, and this is what I've learned, this is why I called it funny, you should say that, is you never know what you're going to say that somebody's going to go, I totally remember that. I mean, I still get emails like, I saw you, 7, 8 years ago, Brandon, you said this in my reading, or you said this at a show, or, whatever. And that always stuck with me. Thank you for saying that. Or it gave me a different perspective. Now I'm kind of doing that. I think that when, you're doing the comedy bits, you're like, hey, this is a gig. I'm going to, bring them up. It's laughter. It's all that other stuff. I think now what you're doing has more impact. You're going to reach more people in ways that you never saw coming. It's like the Course of Miracles insofar that you can't have the expectation of how this is going to go, and it's no longer good or bad. You just have to exist. But in that existence, somebody that doesn't have that conceptualization yet, they're going to hang on.
I feel the same way. And I remember when I started doing comedy, I came across a guy by the name of John DeMartini. I'm jumping ahead of the story a little bit. Yeah. John DeMartini gave me the insight. He said, when the wise get big enough, the house take care of themselves. When I got on stage for the first time and I realized why I was doing what I was doing, how it was going to happen, was academic. I feel the same way with this. I know why I'm doing this now.
Yeah.
My life effectively ended when COVID happened. My job, my career, a relationship, my health, everything came crashing down at once. And I recognize, right, okay. So I recognize when life does that, it's like, okay, you got my attention. Where are we going? Nothing was immediately apparent. But again, I've been through this before. I swagger a little like a veteran. So I knew something was coming. I do believe this is going to lead into that, but I know now why I'm doing it, because it's only encouraging me to just keep allowing the shedding to happen. I'm just allowing and just whatever.
I've had people that have, the quarantine isn't, what greater metaphor could the universe give us than to say, go sit with yourself. You're a pariah unto yourself. Like, you can't be around people. You have to kind of be secluded. And people that have had COVID, they're like, oh gosh, I had a chest cold, and God bless anybody that's passed, and and people that overcome it, is an important part of kind of all of this, and they learn something from it. But most of them got symptoms, they didn't feel good for a week, whatever. It's the contagiousness that pushed you back in. It's that, I think it really kind of reminds us that, you've got to look into yourself. And by looking into yourself, you're being forced into this. You're being forced into quarantine. You're being forced in front of the mirror, the reflection, the self-analysis, understanding your root, where you came from, your parents, your childhood, behind that, blah, blah, blah. And it lets you get to a point where you can say, okay, that's great. It doesn't matter now, because the only thing that matters is now.
The only thing that matters is now.
I think what we're melting away is tombstone talk. What I mean by that is, on your tombstone, what really matters? What do you end up putting on there? Somebody once said,
on mine, I told you I was sick.
Yeah. Whoops.
No parking.
Yeah. I told you that cover sucked, or whatever. But, but it comes down to, all statistics, that white kid, And I think we're moving away from that because it's no longer about the roles of what we are. It's how we go about whatever roles we end up in. And it's a totally different way to look at it. And the conceptualization of the roles will eventually let go as well. But the next step in this is how we approach them. And I think it's a pretty amazing thing. But I want to thank you for coming. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope to do some more, down the road. And certainly I want to be a friend to your, to your efforts and what you're doing here. It's funny. I can't remember another time where I've like addressed the camera less than with this one. We were just like, a couple of guys having a conversation.
When I was doing radio, that's how we always gauged whether or not it was a good show. If the microphone disappeared.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. If we don't see the mics, there's no.
It left about halfway.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah. Did you turn the cameras on?
Yeah. Well, I hope that one was going because at some point it bounced off. All right. And thanks again. We'll see you on the next Everyday Situation.